Hello there, Dr. Brewer, Shaylin Carr, anyone else who will be viewing this presentation. This will be my final assignment presentation. So for um, for the option, which I'm going to do, I decided to go with the assignment option one, and that was the one with the Innocence Project and picking someone who had been um, falsely committed for their crimes and ended up being released. And the man that I chose to talk about was Romeo Fillion. So Romeo Fillion was a man in the 60s and 70s who was wrongfully convicted for a murder that he did not commit. So when he was convicted due to a number of different factors. Throughout the paper, I intend to discuss the topics that include false confessions, eyewitness testimony, and mental disorders that can contribute to false confessions. The reason that I chose these topics. First, first one being false confessions. One of the main reasons that Romeo was convicted is the fact that he provided a false confession. He found himself in trouble with the law with an unrelated charge, and he asked the detective if his lover at the time had said anything to him. The detective had played along, and Romeo ended up confessing to the murder. This, of course, ended up being false. So a little bit more information about that. He had been brought in on a unrelated charge at the time and ended up talking about this murder, and he ended up asking if his lover had said anything to the detective at the time. The detective played along, and then Romero ended up confessing, saying that he had killed this person. Keep in mind that this was 4 years after the original murder. This had been a cold case, and he had been in the original police lineup for for the wife to identify. He was not identified at that time. So then 4 years later, he was brought in on this unrelated charge, which he then ended up confessing to this murder. That is why I'm going to be talking about false confessions. Number two, mental disorders that Romero was suffering from. Two experts gave their expertise at the trial. They stated that Romero suffered from antisocial personality disorder and that he had a habit of lying and inventing stories to make himself feel important. During his appeal process, another expert provided their point of expertise, which reinforced this idea that was presented at his original trial. So during the original trial, the defense called in two separate experts in order to talk about what he was suffering from, this antisocial personality disorder, where it basically included that he would make up stories to make himself feel important. And as you can imagine, in such a high-profile case, this was a very high-profile murder case. He basically what he said that he did it, even though he did not, and that was what the experts were trying to prove there at the original trial. And then again at his appeal trial, an expert confirmed the same thing, that he had lied, and it made him feel more important, that he was seen, those types of things. Finally, eyewitness testimony. The jury put too much emphasis on eyewitness testimony. As it will be explained in the paper, it's not as solid as we might think, and in this case, it was a pivotal factor in the wrongful conviction. So within Romero's case, the jury relied very heavily on the wife's testimony, where she identified saying that it was the killer, that she remembered um, thinking that that was the killer. And that was apparently a very pivotal factor in what ended up Romero, which ended up in Romero getting convicted. So, just a summary here. Romero was a man falsely accused of murder. His trial began in 1972. Um, his major downfall that he provided was a false confession. As provided earlier, he gave this confession when he believed that his lover at the time told the detective about a confession that Romero had originally given him. His lover, Neil, told the police that he had given him a complex confession only days before he ended up confessing it to the police. I will now go to a second video as this software cannot go any longer, so I will be right back.